Yesterday, there was a House hearing on gun reform, gun control, and a Florida Congressman, Greg Steube, who was participating in the hearing virtually, so he was at home, he was zooming into the hearing, was demonstrating with some of his own personal firearms the kinds of handguns that would be illegal under the magazine restrictions being proposed by the Democrats. He held up one handgun after another, very common ones, and said, look, even these would not be allowed. And it triggered Sheila Jackson Lee. She couldn't take it. She didn't want to see this. I don't think she was scared of being shot because Greg Steube wasn't in the room. I think she was scared of the visual of just what you would be banning. He was showing people this is the real world. This is what they would do. These aren't exotic weapons of war. These are the handguns millions of Americans carry for their own protection. So this happened yesterday during a House hearing on guns and gun control. Congressman Greg Steube of Florida was presenting a series of demonstrations of commonly owned handguns that would be illegal if the Democrats got their reforms. He was interrupted by a clearly triggered Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee. Take a listen.
Here's a gun I carry every single day to protect myself, my family, my wife, my home. This is a XL Sig Sauer P365. Comes with a 15-round magazine. Here's a 7-round magazine, which would be less than what would be lawful under this bill if this bill were to become law. It doesn't fit. So this gun would be banned.
I hope the gun is not loaded.
I'm at my house. I can do whatever I want with my guns.
He was joining the hearing virtually, but nonetheless, you wonder if maybe the interruption was intended to kind of throw off the presentation. Congressman Greg Steube, who represents South Central Florida, joins us now on the KTSA Connecticut Quality Water Softeners Newsmaker line. I got the feeling from watching that, Congressman, and by the way, thank you for coming on, that this whole presentation, because it was very visual and stark, was very unsettling to the Democrats. They want people to believe that none of this is going to touch the gun they own.
Yeah, and they want people to believe that they're just talking about rifles. And they want people to believe that, high-capacity magazines. And if you just are talking about it at that high level and you're not actually explaining what the bill actually does, most people will be like, oh, okay, well, I don't have a problem with, someone banning a 100-round drum or whatever. But what the language of the bill does is it bans any magazine, rifle magazine, period, rifle, handgun, it doesn't matter, over 10 rounds. So any gun that can't accept a 10-round magazine would indirectly be banned because the possession, manufacture, and so forth of a 10-round magazine would be illegal.
Yeah. So they're trying to get away with it on the basis of people not knowing what they're really doing. Do you feel like not only did she interrupt you, but the chairman interrupted you? Do you get the feeling the interruptions were designed to kind of throw off or spoil the point you were trying to make?
Oh, 100%. Anytime you're on a nerve with them or you're making a good point, you can hear the Democrats start to stir. They'll start talking, and I could hear her saying something before that wasn't really audible. I could hear it on my end in the WebEx or the Zoom or whatever, where she was trying to interrupt me, and then the chairman ended up interrupting me because you only have 5 minutes. So they know that if they can interrupt your 5 minutes or at least get you off like your think or what you're thinking about or your talking points, that they're interrupting you and taking time away from what you're presenting.
We also heard your colleague from Rhode Island say, and pardon the language, spare me the bullshit about constitutional rights. I've never seen the mask slip so much in all the years we've watched the gun debate. There's no even pretense anymore that this is a right.
Oh, no. The Democrats, they stated in the committee yesterday, you don't have a right to a firearm. The Second Amendment is not absolute. And if they don't get it passed in the House and they don't get it passed in the Senate, well, then they're going to pack the court. The court overrules it and so on and so forth. Their true colors are coming through now. One, because they're desperate and they know they're going to lose the House in the midterms. And two, they think that the majority of Americans, when we say assault weapons, think, oh, why in the world would anybody have a weapon of war? And then when you explain to people it's a semi-automatic rifle, it functions the same way that a semi-automatic handgun functions, they're like, oh, well, that doesn't make any sense. Why would you ban that? And then you start getting into a constitutional argument, and they lose their footing, so they have to go into an emotional argument that we don't care about the children that were massacred in Texas.
You know what I really don't understand, Congressman? I appreciate what you're doing, and thank you for doing it. I do not understand that on the one hand, you're right on the law, you're right on the Constitution, your party is on the cusp of a historic midterm wave election, and your leadership is negotiating behind closed doors for some palatable, maybe we can get away with this kind of gun control. Why negotiate from such a position of strength?
Well, I haven't heard that the House leader or the Republican House leadership is. If they are, I would love to have a conversation with them. But in the Senate, you're right. You have this bipartisan group of senators that are trying to work something out. And it's just like what happened in Florida years ago when I was in the state Senate. People get emotional and they feel like, and Biden said it last night in his speech, oh, we have to do something. People tell us we have to do something. Well, why don't we focus on these children who, by the way, 75% of mass murderers are fatherless? Like the real issues that are behind us. Why don't we focus on that and try and address that problem in our nation's morality and not the actual tool that they happen to use, whether it's a gun, whether it's a vehicle, like the massacre we saw in Wisconsin where the gentleman drove through a whole bunch of defenseless people. But you're right. We shouldn't be compromising on something as absolute as the Second Amendment that is very plain spoken. And there's a ton of case law, even from a California liberal court, that what they're trying to do is completely unconstitutional.
Yeah. Well, it was a good presentation. I'm glad you did it, and I'm glad we had time with you today. Congressman, keep up the good work. Congressman Greg Steube from South Central Florida with us on KTSA. Thank you, sir. 428 on 550 and 107.1 KTSA. Jack Riccardi, 210